afternoon. This is Diane Barrick with Shelley Glazer. This is for 21-2021. Shelley's interviewing for the BE collection. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So one of the first things I wanted to do was to just sort of outline your careers, and then we'll talk more about the process of getting into the choices later.
Great. I was in the field of gerontology, and I held many different positions. I was assistant director of a senior multi-purpose center. I worked for a healthcare corporation, putting certain programs into hospitals. I then was actually a membership and health education coordinator for a special unit at Huntington Memorial Hospital. Took a hiatus to go back to graduate school. I then was executive director of a department at UC Berkeley. Which,
all in gerontology.
Yeah, all in gerontology. That one reached out to retired faculty and staff, believe it or not, and their spouses of 10,000 plus people. That was a great experience. And then I taught at a community college, and I taught gerontology, and I actually chaired also their older adults department.
Did you teach the process of the career that you were currently operating within? Or did you teach gerontology?
Yeah, I was chair of the department, and so we had 75 classes, free classes all throughout San Francisco that ranged. Particularly, I taught something called, it was a life review, called Every Life Tells a Story.
So that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. It was wonderful, but I also taught in the regular public health program because I had my master's in public health. And so I taught the students who weren't older adults, although some of them were returning students getting their AAs and pursuing their new careers. And then some of them were just, older students who hadn't had a chance because of certain things to go back to school after high school.
So if we were to categorize you, would you fall into education? Sounds like, huh?
Well, community, I really thought of myself as a community worker.
Okay.
And a lot of community and education. I was a program developer.
Okay. That's what I like.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Okay.
We want to give you a little title.
Oh, program manager. Yeah.
Program developer sounds.
Program developer.
I
Yeah,
like
that's what floated my boat. Yeah.
Okay, why not? That sounds like what you've done. So where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles, and my family was there since 1901. My mother's side of the family. So we have long roots in LA.
Where did they come from?
Well, they came from, my grandfather came from Austria, and he went to the Lower East Side to live with some folks as he grew up, and then he sold pots and pans across the country and reached LA. My grandmother, he was there about 1908. My grandmother moved in 1901, and they came from St. Louis. My great grandfather had health problems, and they said, "Go west, young man."
I remember hearing that when I was a kid.
Yes, right.
Like, go to Arizona, get rid of those allergies.
Yeah.
I said, okay. I didn't go there, but west and
yeah, my mom.
And where are you and your family? Do you have siblings?
I do. I have two older brothers, one of whom lives in Prescott, Arizona, and the other one lives in LA County. And I have I have a niece and a nephew who are just my heart. And now I have two great nephews and a great niece.
Wow.
And they're in LA.
So both of your brothers have children?
No, just my older brother. My other brother is a confirmed bachelor. He's had serial relationships, but he was a mountain man. He worked in the national parks for his whole career, he didn't have kids either. Yeah.
When were you first aware that you were a lesbian, or you had questions about your sexuality? How old were you?
When I was a junior in college, I started hanging out at the women's center. And so I met some lesbians. I was still dating men. And I was like, yeah, I'm attracted to women. So really, I came out in 1978. I was 22.
Okay. So
Yeah.
prior to that, you were just sort of sailing in the heterosexual world.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I kind of went through this period like, oh, well, maybe I'm bi. I remember getting a paperback book. But really, when I really knew was the first time I was with a woman, and I just felt like it was coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very.
Was that someone you met at that women's group?
No, actually, there was a place in LA called McCabe's Guitar Shop. And that's where they had, at the start, all the women's music concerts, and it was about 75 seats. And I knew someone, and she then introduced me to someone she knew, and I'm like, ah.
This is my aha moment.
This is my aha moment, yeah. And we are still friends.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And what was your educational path?
I did my undergraduate at UCLA, well, UC Davis first, which wasn't a good fit. And I moved back to LA, went to UCLA, and my degree was in sociology. Mm-hmm. Can't do a lot with that. But I had worked with kids. And I had hoped actually to get, and this is significant here, I'd really hoped to get a master's in social work with an emphasis on Jewish community service, because I had been involved in Jewish life all of my life, pretty much, especially as a teenager. It was something that was very close to my heart. And then when I came out, I just didn't feel like I could do both. I just didn't feel like I would be really accepted. So that was a disappointment. It was
You'd be accepted as a lesbian and as
right.
Jewish?
I'm sorry?
Was Judaism part of that non-acceptance?
Yeah, it was my feeling.
I
mean, 1978, there was a lesbian rabbi, there was a lesbian synagogue, though I didn't know about it. It just didn't feel right to me anymore. It just didn't. And so I let that go. I had worked with kids all through my teens and really enjoyed that. And that's why I thought maybe I'd go into special ed at the beginning. And then speaking with this man who really said, that's a field that's populated, gerontology, that's really growing as a profession now. This was 1979. And so he introduced me to someone with LA City Recreation and Parks. I had worked for them. I had taken the civil service exam because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And mom and dad said, you got to have a backup. And it was because of that I then got this position at the senior multi-purpose center, which was like an apprenticeship. I didn't know anything about it, except that I liked old people. Yeah.
Appropriate.
And at the time, UCLA and USC had something called the Long-Term Care Gerontology Center. And everyone who was anyone in LA and aging was part of it. And I got to be part of it. And so I really was an apprenticeship. And it got me hooked. I just loved it. Yeah, I was single. And interestingly, at the senior center, I met my next girlfriend, partner. Yeah. So she was older.
She in gerontology?
Yeah, she's in gerontology. And so you never know who you're going to meet.
It's true. You always have to be available for it.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, what did you feel was the most momentous task that you accomplished in your gerontology career?
I think the most momentous task actually was after graduate school, because I did return to graduate school and I got a master's in social welfare with an emphasis on gerontology and management. And I also got a master's in public health with an emphasis on community health education. But right before I graduated, I had been on this listserv for jobs in aging. And it turned out my university had an opening for someone to start, a whole new department.
Huh.
And so my most
Sounds momentous.
my most momentous task was starting a new department at UC Berkeley.
Mhm.
And actually, we had some grant money, and I was part-time. And within 3 months, the board that I reported to decided that what can you do part-time? And they took all of the money from the grant, dumped it in. So from 3 years, it went to a year and a half. And I was full-time. And in a year and a half, I was able to bring it forward to get full-time funding. And the center still exists.
Wonderful.
So that was my momentous task.
That is
Absolutely.
momentous.
Yeah.
Are you retired now?
Yeah, I'm retired.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm
you miss
retired.
that?
It's lovely. I retired earlier than I might have because my parents were both in LA, elderly, and they really needed a lot of help. They were in declining health. And I was going back and forth between here and LA, and I was trying to teach, and it just didn't work very well. And I decided I only have one set of parents. I can get another job.
Mhm. Good
And
point.
I've never regretted that, ever.
Were you open with your lesbianism when you were in the momentous task process?
No, I never came out at work.
Uh-huh.
I just didn't. And one of the reasons was when I first started working, it just wasn't something you did, 1978. There weren't protections in the workforce like there are now. And also the other reason was I worked with older adults, and they had very different experiences growing up and very different value systems. And so same-sex relationships was not something they were very familiar with. And I just felt it was respectful.
Mhm.
And even when I came out to my mom and my dad, I never expected them to accept it easily
How did
because,
you do with it?
well, it was so different for them when they were growing up,
Mhm.
And my mom, I told her first, she said, lie to your father, it'll kill him. Lie to me, don't tell your father, it'll kill him.
The
And
responsibility.
yeah, exactly. But I had my first breakup, and my dad thought I was dying of cancer because I was so thin. And mom said, "Oh, don't worry, she's just a lesbian." So that was,
So she told him.
she told him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and from that, I give my parents all the credit in the world. My mom in the early '80s went to a support group for Jewish parents of gay children, and they were very welcoming to everyone I brought home. They really struggled. And as I said in my mom's eulogy, it broke her heart, but not her love.
Mhm.
And the same, my dad, I was very, very blessed. And it took time.
They sound like wonderful people.
They were good people. They
Mhm.
had good hearts,
Mhm.
and they loved me. And they kept that at the center, and they struggled with what they had to struggle with. What really kicked it over the edge was in 1988. My mom was in a life-threatening accident around the world, way over in Tasmania, and it just brought us all closer. And it didn't matter,
Mhm.
what mattered was just taking care of the family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that was helpful. And it came to when San Francisco allowed marriages. My parents actually gave my current wife and I a reception.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that was, personally.
How did they tell you that they were going to do that?
Oh, they called the night before we were going to City Hall,
Mhm.
and they wanted to wish us well.
What year was that?
That was 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when Gavin Newsom, as mayor of San Francisco, said, "Hey, gay people can get married in San Francisco." And we were one of the last to get an appointment. Of course, they were annulled. However, in the meantime, and my dad, they got on the, says, "Where's Lindsay?" I said, "Well, she get her on the phone." And Lindsay got on the phone, and my dad said, "Hello, daughter."
Wonderful.
It was really wonderful. And then mom said, he said, "We want to give you a reception." she said, well, we gave Bill a reception when he got married.
You're our daughter.
So of course. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my mom, she would have been a hell of a businesswoman. But she, played the role of wife and mother, and she did get involved in some other stuff. And she was very happy that my career took off like it did.
Proud of you.
She was. And she just said, I don't think I ever could have done it. And I thought to myself, oh, yeah, you could have.
Your genetics I'm carrying around.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
That's just timing. Our mothers had different expectations and experiences. They're very
Good.
bright.
And yeah, and she wanted a girl. She'd had 2 boys, made my father try again. And at the time, you didn't know the sex of the baby. And my mother, who had studied opera, when she found out I was a girl, she yelled, "It's a girl!" And the whole hospital could practically hear her. So again,
things coming in.
Yeah, the expectations that she had for her little girl changed, and she changed along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
do you think now lesbians can be out in their workplace in the areas that you were working in?
I think it's very contextual.
It
depends where you are geographically. It depends on what kind of workplace it is. It depends on how comfortable you are, because you really need to observe and see what the environment is like and if it feels comfortable. I know some of the younger folks now, it's amazing to me. I'm a lesbian, I'm out, you accept me for who I am, and that's just it. And that's pretty swell, actually.
You think that would be appropriate in the field that you were in, the gerontology field? Do you think that's opened up to that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. When I was at the senior center, they started an organization through Cal State Dominguez Hills, actually called the National Association of Lesbian and Gay Gerontology. So there was always a recognition. And then when I had a stint at the American Society on Aging, and they had, this was in the 90s, early 90s, and they had a special group for gay and lesbian elders. So definitely, yeah, there's definitely a place in the field.
Good.
Yeah. There's no question about that.
How do you center yourself? No.
Not very well.
But you try.
I do. I'm more of an off-again meditator than an on-again meditator. I've always been very busy.
Stay active.
Yeah, just in my head a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on it in terms of staying centered. I mean, some of it is just stopping and being in the moment.
Stopping the spin.
Yeah, stopping the spin.
Do you have hobbies?
I do. My hobby is genealogy.
That fits, doesn't it? Like a career unto itself.
It could be. It could be. In fact, my career really had 2 threads. And one of them had to do with being able to be of service. Mm-hmm. And I felt honored by that. I really did.
I can tell.
And to, in one small way or another, to be able to help somebody's quality of life. That was really important to me. I wanted to say too, you were talking about younger people and could they come out in their profession, and maybe I think of young women entering the workforce, and anyone really. I would say to them, talk to people. Talk to people. I don't care if they're on the street. I don't care where they are. Strike up conversations, because you never know if that might lead to something.
Like that man you talked to.
Well, yeah. And it's very true. I mean, one time I went back to the senior center to visit. Met some folks there that I had known, and they asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm looking for a part-time job in gerontology. And they said, oh, you should talk to our son's girlfriend. And that turned into actually to a full-time job that greatly impacted my career and was the place I realized I needed to get a master's degree in order to progress. And another time I was at Temple, and this woman turned around and started talking with me. It turns out she worked at the college where I had just seen an advertisement for a position. And she helped me, navigate that. So you just never know what a conversation can do. And network. Don't be afraid.
That's a good piece of information. I think young people are afraid to talk to somebody.
I think they are.
Especially the generation gap.
Yeah.
People like to talk.
People love to talk. They love to talk about
about themselves.
Right, and what they've done. And there are a lot of women who want to mentor other women.
Mm-hmm.
A challenge is that still some positions are very hard for women to get. So some women are more competitive
Mm-hmm.
with other folks. And there are also, good mentors who are men. And you have to open yourself up to learning. Stay open to possibilities, and stay open to learning.
How about open about your sexuality? Do you think
I'm sorry?
How about open about your sexuality? You're lesbian.
Again, you know what? For me, I would think it was contextual. If you're coming into a position where you think, hey, this is who I am, they should accept me for who I am. I don't want to work here if I can't be out. It's not it's not the place for you to work, and you really have to choose.
Right.
Yeah, what your values are and what you value in a workplace. What's most important to you. I think eventually that you will meet people and you will be able to come out more if you haven't been.
Right.
Yeah, if you haven't been. I do remember when I worked at UC Berkeley, and I thought, I'm so closeted, even though I was out in graduate school. And there was a guy I knew, he was a security guard, and we talked all the time. And he said, I want to tell you something. I said, Steve, what? He said, if you weren't that way, I'd ask you out on a date. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, it's not as big a secret.
What way is that?
Yeah.
Do you have questions you'd like to ask me? Regarding the collection.
I'm excited about it because
Good. I am too.
I don't think there's anything like it really out there that a young lesbian woman might be able to go to, especially of this generation, in a way they're comfortable with, and hear about older lesbians' experience and how that evolved.
Right. And
about their professions and how they came to be in their professions and how it wasn't a straight line, excuse the expression, but it wasn't linear.
You're correct.
It wasn't linear, and where you were just leads to something else. And again, and don't be afraid to, really reinvent yourself.
If people would like to contact you,
I always love to talk to people about it, because I think that
you don't have any. I think that's part of the network of this, right?
Absolutely. No. And I think too, gerontology needs good people.
Mm-hmm.
And some people shy away from it because they say, I don't want to work with those old people.
That's right.
And it's a very rewarding, it's a very rewarding profession. And people are needed in all different roles.
Good.
So there's a lot of opportunity still.
Okay. You're on the referral list.
I'm on the referral list. I love it.
So in closing, what would you like people, if you knew you were dying, to remember about you, sort of your personal legacy?
That I cared. That I cared about community. I cared about people. That I had a good sense of humor, even if some of it made people groan a lot because they were puns.
Creative. sense of humor.
Yeah. I know there was one other thing, but just, that I lived my life the best I could at the time I was living it. And I always strove to better myself.
Or stay in the moment.
Yeah, well, as much as I could, as I've said before, but I always was looking for the evolution of my personal self, as well as, my professional self. So
Very introspective.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. And, there are challenges in life where I realized I got to take care of these things. I have to look into them. I have to better understand them. I don't want them to hold me back. And just one last thing I want to say.
Sure.
This was a big deal for me to do this.
Thank you. Yeah.
I had a lot of, and it was important for me to do this. So
It's an
thank
important
you.
part of it. I understand the big deal part of it. It's a big deal for me too, for us.
All right, Dan. Thank you so much for having me as part of it.
Thank you.